I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the new Volkswagen Touareg 310 TDI V8. The new top of the range of this third generation Volkswagen Touareg lineup here in Australia. There's one thing I can tell you, and that's that this is a last hurrah for a big Volkswagen SUV with a big luxurious engine. Of course, anything could happen in future, but I would be absolutely shocked if this wasn't the last V8 diesel Touareg ever offered in Australia. Now, it's just got here this week, but Volkswagen in Europe have already announced that they're not going to make any more of these Touaregs with a V8. So if you want one, this is your opportunity to buy one. Only a limited number have come to Australia, and they pack an 8-cylinder engine with 310 kilowatts of power and 900 Newton meters of torque. This thing can pull. It's expensive though. $136,000 is a lot for a Volkswagen, but you're effectively getting a Touareg with the lot. As you can see, it's wearing the R-Line package. We've got 21-inch wheels in the Suzuka design that's been so popular on the mid-size Tiguan SUV. And even in this white, the Touareg is resplendent. There are other colors that you can choose from, however, and in fact the only options on the V8 are the colors and whether or not you'd like a panoramic sunroof. Everything else you see here is standard, and that's one thing that sets the V8 apart from other Touareg models, which typically require you to option in key features, including this InnoVision cockpit, which is the real standout of the Touareg in terms of technology. It involves this 15-inch touchscreen here between the two front seats, but very much tilted toward the driver. As you can see, it's basically cartographic in terms of the map it presents to you. Big, beautiful, clear, crisp, high res. Unfortunately, the wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto don't actually make use of the whole screen. They just come up in a box in the center, but it's better than nothing. But the audio system in this car, a DIN Audio Consequence stereo, is powerful and punchy. They're perhaps not quite as clear as some other systems that I've heard recently. That being said, the functions on the screen are easy to control, apart from the fact that with the climate, you do actually have to click into menus in order to change the fan speed. There are no more buttons for that sort of thing. You do get a nice knurled toggle here for the volume, which is cool. Plus we have rotary buttons for the drive modes and the air suspension, which is standard on this car. And then we have a large digital cockpit here, a virtual cockpit offering mapping in a big screen in the center, or you can view your trip computer or multimedia functions. Now, the Touareg R-Line is the first Volkswagen to arrive in Australia with a new company steering wheel with the haptic buttons. So you can actually press down on them, or you can just tap on them. We have this perforation here. It's a broadly similar wheel to the new Passat Business, but these buttons here on the spokes are quite different. Paddle shifters, still only plastic though, even on a 136 grand V8 Touareg. Personally, I think those should have been metal. But most of the time you'll probably let the 8-speed torque converter gearbox do the work. Now we're sitting in comfortable, big, air-bladdered seats here in the Touareg V8. Black and grey is the colour scheme on this car. It's definitely conservative, but it looks good. But there's a huge range of adjustment possible in these seats. 3 positions of memory, heating, cooling, and massaging, all of which can be controlled here through the screen, and buttons down below for the seat adjustment by the door down here. It's an incredibly comfortable car for long distance touring, just as we found with the V6 models. It's just that where those V6 cars give you 600 Newton meters of torque, a figure we never thought was low, the V8 sees that bumped up to 900 Newton meters. And quickly, in terms of practicality, we've got very large cup holders, a tray ahead of the shifter with wireless charging and USB-C fast charging, a tray between the seats here where you can store your USB cables, big door bins and a big glove box. So all in all, up front it's pretty nice. If I was going to point out the low lights, it would be that even on the V8, these hard plastics here below the belt line continue, though everywhere else you look and touch, it's squidgy leather-lined materials. So that's the front. Let's have a look in the back. The back doors open pretty wide, and this would be a very lush family car. Fitting child seats is easy. We've got exposed Isofix points behind this cap here, and the amount of room on offer is pretty impressive. Now, like the other Touareg models, this V8 is a 5-seater only, which means you don't have the flexibility of 7 seats in the back, though this car has a net installed, implying just how good it would be if you have a big dog. And personally, I can see this car working really well in applications like that. It's a big car, it seats 5 people in comfort, and there's a big boot behind you too. For myself at 6 foot, headroom isn't a problem, even with this sunroof. Legroom's good, tow room's good. We've got 2 more climate zones back here, heating for the outboard seats, air vents, a flip down armrest with cup holders, mat pockets on the back of both seats, and the seats themselves are comfortable. They give you a bit of recline and a nice feature, integrated sun blinds to keep the sun off the face of little ones. So that's the back seat. Let's have a look in the boot. Moving around the back of the Touareg, I think it's a handsome vehicle. And for those among us that prefer our high performance cars to be understated, there's no V8 badge on the back that tells people that you bought the most expensive Touareg by far. In fact, the only V8 badges are on the front flanks, which means you'll have to be looking very carefully to tell this one apart from a V6 R-Line. The wheels are also a bit of a giveaway, however. That being said, if you want to show people that you spent 136 grand on this car, the lack of a V8 badge or anything like that on the back might frustrate you. What won't frustrate though is the ample cargo space, fast moving electric tailgate there, opening up to reveal a big square boot that's a smart boot too. We've got this chrome finisher here to help protect the paint when you're putting your suitcases in and out. There's no load lip at all, and if the car's a little high or you're carrying something too heavy, we have controls right here in the boot in order to lower the air suspension at the rear, which you can see brings that load height right down to the height of a station wagon. So if you're upgrading from something like a Passat, it won't be that much harder to get your stuff into the back of the Touareg V8. We've also got this netting here to stop stuff from rolling about. Underneath this boot floor, we have a spare wheel, collapsible spare, so that gives you a little bit more peace of mind with country touring, although with the enormous wheel and tyre package on this car, fitting a full-size spare would have been difficult. And we have releases to drop those back seats remotely from here, so if you're at IKEA, or somewhere a little bit fancier, I suppose, if you're buying a car like this, you can push your flat packs right to the front without having to step around the side of the car. We then have controls here to either close the boot or have the car automatically lock as you walk away. But right now, we'll jump into the driver's seat and check out what this 900 Newton meter V8 SUV is like to drive. So, what is the daddy of Touaregs, and I guess the daddy of new Volkswagens in Australia, like to drive? Well, competent is the first word that springs to mind. Fast is another. Well balanced would be 2 more. Because this is one of those vehicles and one of those engines that promises big pace, big straight line pace, but also muscular towing ability, awesome country touring, finesse and refinement, but also okay fuel consumption, and it delivers all of that stuff. And it's one reason why big diesels in big vehicles like this has been a formula that has been popular in Australia for a long time, is because unlike petrols, they're able to combine all of those elements with acceptable fuel economy, but also they pack much more range than something like a Tesla Model X, which you would probably consider at this price point, I suppose. You know, the fact the instrument cluster says 1,000 kilometers of range means a lot in a country like Australia, where, you know, I'm in Sydney as we speak, and the second biggest city in Australia, Melbourne, is over 800 kilometers away. So a vehicle like this will take that in its stride, no issue. And for people that do long distance driving in this country, that's helpful. And a long distance drive in this car is a pleasure, partially because of that engine under the bonnet. 4 litre twin turbo V8 diesel, 310 kilowatts of power, 900 Newton meters of torque. Big figures, similar to the Audi Q7, same base engine, but we don't have the 48 volt architecture in this car. So we don't have the sailing, we don't have as refined a start-stop system, and we don't have the electric compressor which spools the turbos up quicker. That being said, putting my foot down, there isn't much turbo lag in this car for a start. It is twin turbo. It's not a particularly laggy powertrain, it's just that in the SQ7 it just turns it on straight away. But that car is considerably more expensive again than the Touareg V8. So that's a compromise that you have to consider. Now the 8-speed torque converter auto is a real gem, offering up silky smooth shifts, and it just stays out of the way. You don't even notice it's there. You can put it in sport mode, you can drive it through the plastic paddles, but I prefer just to leave it in drive. A powertrain like this is a classic, lazy, laid-back engine. You know, it's of the same philosophical school as big Aussie V8s were back in the day. Not really that much about performance, more about just reeling in the horizon on a country drive, heaps and heaps of power and torque in reserve. Now it can actually turn it on in a straight line. The Touareg 310 TDI will do 4.9 seconds, 0 to 100. I mean, that is hot hatch fast. That's basically Golf R fast, just a little bit behind in a bus like this. But that's not a good measure of this car's performance. Chuck a 3-ton trailer on the back, and the fact that this car lets you barely notice is a testament to how much torque it has. Getting close to that 4-figure torque reminds you of cars like the Audi Q7 V12 TDI, but this is considerably more refined than that. You know, it doesn't sound like much in the cabin, but I think with a diesel that's what you want. Instead, you get this purr with a slightly mean undertone to it, and I like that. Overall though, this is a very understated performance SUV, and it's not particularly firmly sprung, which I think is good. We have standard air suspension, we do have 21-inch wheels and moderately low profile tires, but it's not overly stiff, soaks up bumps pretty well, and you still get that kind of slight float, but contained float from the air suspension. You know, it's a super relaxing car to drive. For me, that's what this genre is all about, because if I wanted serious performance at this sort of price, I'd probably look at an Audi S4 or RS4 station wagon, especially given this is only a 5-seater. For me, this car is all about packing big performance. You know it's there. You can't really tell from the outside of the car, but then, you know, it turns it on. It's perfectly capable of turning it on. It's a very refined car. I do think some of the interior materials could be a notch better than they are, but by and large, it is a nice place to spend time. Great seats, super important in a car like this, a long distance tourer. I've done a couple of big drives in Touaregs now, Northern Africa, and then closer to home all around southeastern Australia in these specific seats. The Savona leather, super duper massaging seats, heating, cooling, they got a lot, it's good. Love the Innovision cockpit, it helps me, I like a big map. This is an essential option in a Touareg if you ask me, and the V8 has it standard. And the safety systems are pretty good. The lane tracing assistance is very zealous, but it's okay, you can turn it on and off. Adaptive cruise we've got a 360-degree camera, front and rear cross traffic alert, rear AEB, very important in an SUV and certainly not available on every car in this segment. All in all, you know, it's just a big cruiser. It's a real big cruiser, and it won't last forever. So those are my detailed impressions of the new Volkswagen Touareg V8 TDI. There's no denying that this is an absolutely lush vehicle, probably the most luxurious car Volkswagen has ever made, even taking into account vehicles like the Phaeton. Just thinking about how far this brand has come in terms of refinement and capability. But even if you disagree with that assertion, there's no debating that this is an absolutely muscular, powerful, imposing VW, and probably the last of its kind to pack the option of a V8 diesel engine. Even though this thing is incredibly refined and even reasonably economical, quite aside from that amazing pulling power, it's clear that powertrains aren't going in this direction in future. So if it's a recipe that you've been sitting on, saying one day you'll buy a car like this, that day has pretty much come, because even at 136 grand, an expensive price, a Touareg like this simply won't last forever on the market. So if you've been considering it, I'd definitely take one for a test drive and see if it's to your taste. Now let me know what you think about the Touareg V8 down below this video. Are you planning to snap one up? While you're there, make sure to hit subscribe and the notification bell. And as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.